Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Today we're going to take on one of the reels that I previewed in that pandemic project bunch. This is a Shakespeare. It's a Shakespeare Wonder reel. It's a model EJ. Now, Shakespeare did a modeling code that was kind of secret code for the year that it was being sold. I believe the E series is the 50s, which would make sense for this reel. The J, I'm thinking, is an early 50s, like 51, 52. I'll come back and I'll confirm that with you a little bit later in the video. We're going to have to stop this at some point and clean this reel. This is the reel I showed you that it's just got a sticking bail. This trip lever here just isn't functioning. Usually that's a case of just hasn't been oiled in a while. When I was examining this for purchase, I did make sure that it did move, which it does, but I also noticed that there's an awful lot of junk in that built up here, and I assume it's built up on the inside of this spring assembly as well. And we'll go ahead and we're going to give this one a deep cleaning along the way. So what I want to start with is just kind of removing the external parts as I would normally do, and then we'll probably stop the video for a little bit and do some cleaning with an ultrasonic cleaner, see what we can get out of that in terms of dirt, and then we'll come back and do the reassembly and the lube and the like. So let's start by taking off the spool. You can see already that this reel's been laying around or something for quite some time. We have a dirt track in here, have a pile of dirt here, and I don't know if this was just kind of maybe hanging on a rod like this, maybe even hanging in the rain or something that caused the stuff to settle to the one side of the spool, but it obviously has. This has a spring clip drag, so we'll go in and we'll take the drag washers out and see what's going on there as well. The spool itself has got a lot of dirt and tarnish and junk on it, but looks complete otherwise. The little click mechanism is stuck. Again, I think that's a matter of dry grease. I see the spring is here. It's just not moving, so we'll see what we can do to free that. Yeah, inside this rotor you can probably see why everything's kind of the state it is. We just have a big buildup of sediment and the like. And one of the problems with these types of reels is it's a closed cup on the rotor. You have your spools coming in, it's taking the hit of all of the water, the wet line, everything. It settles into the rotor and it really doesn't have anywhere to go. The water will just sit there, and we can see we have a good accumulation of some salt, some dirt, some dried grease, a little bit of everything going on here. So we're going to go give that one a good cleaning after we take it off. So let's take that off. I have no idea on the history of this reel. It was at a flea market. It was $10. I thought that was a good buy. Sometimes I judge the value of a purchase just based on can I do a video on it and show somebody else how to do that. But we'll see how that's going. So I'm taking the side plate screws out. First thing I'm doing is I take the side plate screws out and making sure that they're all the same length. If they're not, I want to make sure I know where that screw comes from or goes to. Right now we have two that are the same. Hopefully this third one is the same as well. And I don't have a schematic for this reel, so kind of playing by ear. So one of the things I always encourage folks to do is to take pictures. Now I'm taking pictures of the video, and I'll probably take some pictures along the way as well. But the idea of the pictures is if you get stalled or you forget how these things go on reassembly, and like now I'm going to be doing an ultrasonic bath on this thing. That's going to take some time to do that and some cleanup. I may forget the sequence that I took those pieces and parts out. The other thing I encourage folks to do is wear a protective glove. You never know what's inside these reels. Keep the grease and junk off of you. This side plate should come off. I noticed that there's a little pin here. I'm assuming that kind of holds it in. Kind of curious to see yeah, we have a pin here. Kind of curious to see what's underneath. Just going to use a little wedge to pull that pin out. Oh boy. So we've got quite a packing of grease in here. We have the crosswind gears over in the case. That's why we have the bump. We just have Folks ask me why I wear that glove. Well, there it is right there, and the picture tells a picture's worth 1,000-word kind of story. I suspect this was a surf reel. An old-timer just decided he was going to pack it with grease to keep it somewhat waterproofed. Not a terrible idea, but what goes along with that is that you have to change that grease frequently. Let's see if we can get this in a little collar. Got a crosswind block. Crosswind block seems in good condition. Don't lose that collar. You can't get parts for these types of reels for sure. So I'm going to put that collar right back on. Do a little bit more of the cleaning here. That's some pile of grease there. Just using a Q-tip to clear the channels. Several Q-tips. Other than that, it doesn't look like this grease has damaged anything. So we'll, like I mentioned, we'll just give it a good ultrasonic cleaning there. I don't use the ultrasonic cleaner on everything, but every now and then it's one of these projects like we saw up top there. It's got a lot of junk in there, so we'll just take advantage of it to try and free some of that built up salt and the like. Alright, that's probably ready to go in. You want to be careful with that ultrasonic too. Sometimes these tags come off in that based on that. Alright, let's see what's up next then. We should be able to find some way to get this out. Let me get this off the table here. This doesn't make any sense. Let's grab another one of these. See if we can find the attachment here. This is where a schematic would be helpful. I'm just trying to figure out the attachment, how this crosswind block is attached. There it is. So you have a screw. It just takes a while to get all that old grease out of there. That makes sense. You have a screw that's holding the axle shaft in. So let's take that off. It's funny, right in front of your eyes, and you can't see it because of all the dirt. Just going to lay that on the table for a moment. Pull the axle shaft. Going to pull the crosswind block assembly. It's an interesting technology. This is really a big reel. This is kind of a beastie. Okay, got that off. Grease has protected this very well. I'm just going to take that screw, I'm going to put it right back in there so I don't lose that. And then I'm just going to clean a little bit of this so that I don't get my parts tray loaded up with grease. But there is a good amount of dried grease on the bottom of this as well. Just use the side of a screwdriver here to kind of, wow, that's some grease. I'm not quite sure what that was, but it is dried. So when you get into a dried grease situation like this, sometimes a good thing to do is just grab a WD-40, just let it sit on there, some other penetrating oil or degreaser, and that'll loosen that up. So I'm going to do that right now. It's not much there. It's a click rotor to the spool. I'm going to put that right in the spool there, and we'll just let that sit for a bit. Okay, with that done, then I can come over and grab this cap, and it looks like I need to stop the video anyway because I don't believe I have the ratchet for this, so I'm going to have to stop and go get that. Okay. Okay, so a lot has gone on since I stopped that video to go get the ratchet to remove the rotor, and then I just got caught up in myself, and I'm going to apologize. There's probably a few steps that I'm assuming made it to the first part of this video that didn't. But right now we've completely taken apart the lower assembly in the body. I've removed the rotor. Remember, I had an issue here with this was not fully engaging, and what it turned out to be was just a lot of dirt and dried grease which was impeding the progress. So now we have a properly set bail that will trip. So you'll notice instead of just that partial engagement, when we come over to the full set, that jumps right in the way it should. There'll be a bump I'll show you later because I don't believe I had it when I was taking parts off. That's going to hit this and force that to go forward. So good functioning bail, clean inside channel. I didn't show you this part. This part is the shield that falls underneath this, and I had to take that off in order to get to the assembly. So we did that, and we've cleaned up all of the other parts. So right up front, I'm going to apologize if you didn't see me take it apart. Watch how it goes back together, and as it goes back together, we'll kind of explain the different things that go on. So we're going to start reinstalling this. I'm going to start with the pinion gear. Now, problem here. This pinion gear has a ball bearing on it, and the ball bearing is acting fine. Unfortunately, the inner race of this ball bearing is frozen to the shaft. So what's happening is the pinion gear is turning, but it's also turning the inner ring. Now, normally I would say let's go heat this thing up, let's go work to replace it and do other things. Right now I am unsure of the size of that bearing, and I know I don't have a replacement for it, and I don't know if one's available. So that's a compromise I'm willing to live with. This is my own personal reel. I paid $10 for it. That's a compromise that I don't believe is going to impact the performance of this reel, and it's just not practical at this point in time to go bust this bearing off and then find out that I don't have one to replace it. So I'm going to leave it as that. This has all been cleaned. As you can see, it's a nice solid piece of, I believe, stainless, and it's in nice condition all around, so we're going to leave it at that. And we're going to start to reinstall. So I'm going to grab some fishing reel grease. Just make sure that this gets a nice healthy dose of that. And I'm going to place that in through the top set here. I gave this an ultrasonic bath to clean up that as well as the rotor. I think that's, if I didn't mention it, that was my plans. That's what I intended to do, and that's what I did do. Seems like I still have just a little bit left there from the cleanup. So we have the pinion gears in. Now I can set this little cap and cup, if you will. You need to align the holes. And then there were 3 different screws on here. I'm not sure if I showed you this. I don't believe I did. There's 2 flathead screws, and there's one that's got a cone on it. That cone is going to be the trip for that bail assembly. So you definitely want to make sure that you have those. I'm not lined up here, I guess. And these are 1/4-inch nut drivers. Of course, with all the tools I have on my bench, I don't have a 1/4-inch nut driver. I'm sure it's around somewhere, but it's not here. So I use the 1/4-inch ratchet to do that. So that's the flat that I was referring to. Here's the second one. Also flat. And I'm tightening these by hand as much as I can. And then the last one almost looks like a grease fitting. It's got a conical top to it. And that's the one that's going to trip the bail when it fires. So I did, while we're doing this, I did look up model EJ. As I mentioned, there's a kind of a secret code that Shakespeare used for the model codes. The E, if you have any model out there that has an E prefix as the first of the identifiers, that's the 1960s. And then if you have a J working backwards, J is 1962, K would be 1961, L would be 1960, working back to A, which would be 1969. So it's they count up from the years. So F is 1940, G is 1950. I'm sorry, G is 1940. Get this right yet? They work downwards on the years. So G is 40, F is 50, E is 1960. I think they stopped the date code in the 60s. I'm not sure as model numbers, but this one being an EJ is a 1962 reel, which makes sense. The spinning reel really didn't even become popular until the 1950s. There we go. We got our cup on. And the 1950s saw a lot of innovation, and the 60s kind of started standardizing it. Okay, with that in place, then I'm going to put some oil. I'm going to use fishing reel oil back on that bearing. Let that soak in. Now we have this trip lever I was showing you before. When this expands out, it's going to push that rod up like that. That rod is going to hit this point, and it's going to fire it to close. And we'll see if we can't do that just after we attach this here. Put that back. One of the things that I probably didn't mention as I went to break to go get that is that there are two nuts. That's how they're holding this together, kind of keeping the nuts clamped, much like a reel seat would do on a rod blank. It would put pressure on one to put pressure on the other to stop it from turning. And then I have the 13 millimeter socket. We'll tighten that down. And then we have the second one. Let me see if we can't get the bail to fire this way before we go any further. So you have a double nut here, and you need a 13 millimeter wrench to make that work. Kind of looks like one when you do it, but there's actually two there. Give it a throw there, make sure everything's working nicely. And then let's go ahead and see if we can't trip that bail. What's going to happen is that bail is going to hit that little stud. No, probably don't have enough. There you go. I don't have enough force in my hand is what's happening here. We'll see it when we put it all together. Okay, next up then was the main gear. This turned out beautifully. It's looks like it's a bronze main gear, cleaned up beautifully with stainless outside gear. Again, fishing reel grease. I'm using Penn Precision reel grease as the grease. I did check all the teeth on this as I was cleaning them out. And this one was certainly designed to last a long time. There's no question about that. Okay, on the inside of this gear, before we go to install then, there were those two pieces. There's the click, or the anti-reverse ratchet. That's got a rectangular fold on it. That sits on the main gear in the back. There's that little clip, and then there is a little shim washer that goes on that. And as I mentioned in the past, you want to make sure that this anti-reverse is not in that position. You want to make sure it's off so that when you go to install that main gear, you don't run into any trouble with that. When we came to the back, I'm not sure if we had shown this as well, so I'm going to apologize. There's a screw. That whole screw is an oil access point. And those of you that know me know that this is not my time to shine with small screws, but eventually we do get it. There we go. Got it started. So you can oil the shaft of this without taking anything off. In this case, I put grease on there, so no oil is needed. And then we have the handle, and there's a handle washer that I left inside. So we'll make sure that goes on. And I like to put that on before I get too much further down the road, because that's going to hold the main gear in place as I do the other work. And we should have a nice turning wheel at this point, which we do. Okay, we have our side plate then. The side plate assembly holds the crosswind block, and it also has that indentation for the drive gear to come through. So we're going to put a little bit of oil, grease again onto the stud here. That's the only part that's going to connect to that crosswind gear. Hold that bearing there, or shield. Did the same thing here. We cleaned out all the teeth. This one might be aluminum. Not quite sure, but it feels like aluminum. Make sure we get our greased portion in there. We're going to load that in. Next up then, we can install the axle shaft. That got cleaned up as well. I put a light coating of grease onto that. And again, if I miss some of these steps, kind of apologize. I got hung up in a couple of different things. Came back to the project, didn't quite realize where I was. And as a result, may or may not have included all the steps. Remember when we set this off, we put that tie down screw right in there so we could find it. We're going to go ahead and load this up now. This pin helps to center a hole in the axle shaft. Go ahead and put the hold down screw in there. So that's your slide bar. That slide bar is going to be driven by this gear. So I think what we'll do is I'm going to line to the top here, so that when I close the case, I will have that that gear in place. I imagine you could put the gear on to the slide here. I think that would be a little bit more difficult when you go to marry the case. I'm just looking in from the side now to make sure that I've got that engaged, which I do. And now we're just going to make sure that the stud gets into the hole there. And it looks like we've pretty much got that one done. And let's just make sure that our axle shaft is going up and down. It's not, so we didn't get that on. So let's go ahead and get that done again. And while I'm at it, I don't know if I need any there. Grease, but I'll make sure that I get grease there. That kind of sounds a little more sturdy. And again, we'll give it a crank. This time we have our axle shaft going up and down, so that's correct. And we want to get our side plate screws in place. Now, interestingly enough, this side plate screw actually has a thread on it for the first part, which is nice because you won't lose your screws as you're taking them out. Then it has a little jump there, and then you can get to the side plate itself. Do the same here. And one more screw to tighten them all up, and I think that other than the drag washer set in that spool, I think we're pretty much at the point where this reel has been completed in kind of a haphazard way. But what a beautiful piece of engineering this one is. I can see why it has its fans. Okay, so let's give it a test drive then. We're all buttoned up here. Sounds like we have the anti-reverse. We do. You gotta watch that. When you install that click ratchet, it does have offsetting teeth. It doesn't go either way. It goes in one direction. So if you find that you've installed it and you don't have that as a stopper, you put it on backwards. Let's make sure that bail functions properly. There you go. So I guess I just didn't have enough hand strength when I was doing the manual trip on that. Okay, last thing to go then is the spool. I think it has a traditional drag setup. I'm going to think leather washers. It's been a long time. Grab your pick. There's a circle clip in here. Hold your finger on it. You don't want that clip to shoot. It is a spring. And I'm trying to be careful. I don't need that thing in the next town. Okay, get that off. Let's pull those drag washers out. We got a plastic one under there. I don't know if that's stock issue for this one. Looks like a Teflon washer. You know what, I'm just going to leave that there. Alright, so we have a couple of hard washers. They seem okay. This one looks like it may be cracking. Let me check to see what I have here as an alternative. Kind of keep all my washers. That one should do. So we're just going to substitute that with another round washer. Alright, so make sure that your washers are clean, your metal ones. So you have a round one goes in first. This one was brittle, ready to crack. This one seems stronger. Yeah, that one should be okay. And again, it's my personal reel, so as long as I know that I'm doing it for myself, I'm not going to worry too much about this. I may try to find aftermarket drag washers somewhere. Okay, so round one goes, and we're going to put that next one in, that next fabric washer will go in there. Oh, that's a good fit. I don't know what reel that came off of, but it's a good fit. That'll work well. Now you want the eared washer. That'll sit in there like that. And we'll use that last one. I'm going to put a little bit of grease on there. Yeah, it's fish reel grease, but you know what? It'll help keep this washer flexible. It's not as brittle as that other one, but you can take some precautions there. And the last of the metal washers goes in. Try and do a little bit better job of aligning that. Alright, and then that clip, again, watch that clip, it's a spring. Put one side in and hold it down. Snap that in, you've got it set. Let's put that up top here then. Make sure that that all goes in. The ultrasonic did a nice job on that spool as well in terms of cleaning that up. And we'll take the drag adjuster knob that didn't go in the ultrasonic. So let's just clean a little bit of the stuff off the bottom of that. Alright, let's button this up, make sure those drag washers work. Tighten this all the way down first. Oh yeah, we certainly locked on that. Loosen it back up a little bit. Yep, we have movement. Good. So those are going to hold. So again, I think this one, I'm going to put some line on it and just have some fun with this one. What a nice reel. $10. A lot of time spent cleaning it up for sure. It was certainly over lubricated. But you know what? I think this one's going to do a nice job out on the water, and we'll have some fun with it, for sure. So again, if you're a first responder, anybody who's essential personnel who's been working so hard to help keep us all safe, thank you for everything it is that you've done and are doing and will do as this pandemic continues to be with us for some time. I really do appreciate all of the efforts that you've made. Some folks have asked about my Reel repair services, yes, I do repair reels by mail. You'll see a lot of viewer reels that come in that actually become the subject of these videos. This one, again, is a flea market find. But if you have a reel that you're not confident about working on or just don't have the time to work on, then by all means contact me by way of the business card that follows in this video, and I'll be happy to provide you the details on the repair service. And again, if you're a first responder, I want to offer to you that I will repair your reel or tune it up free of charge, because you've certainly got a lot more important things to do than play around with that. So again, contact me through the information on the business card, and I'll be happy to supply you with how to get that reel to me and when I can work on it. So I hope you've enjoyed this. If you did, please like it. If you want to see more, please subscribe. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Have a great day.